going to go ahead and get started. Everyone will settle down for us. Thank you very much. All right. Number one, I want to thank you all for showing up for our very first Provost interview presentation session over the next 3 days. This is Dr. Doug Scheidt, and I keep tripping over his name for some reason. I don't mean to. But I'm going to let him tell you all about himself when he starts his presentation. Don't forget, we get to the end of the session, he'll be answering questions. Don't forget to use your microphones. If you do, we'll remind you again. So anyway, presenting Dr. Doug Scheidt.
Wonderful, thank you, Penny. So as is true to form, I've got too much to say in 30 to 45 minutes. I timed it twice, 39 minutes. We'll see how it goes. My name is Doug Scheidt, and I'm really pleased to be here. And I'm thrilled to see even as many people here on a Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock, which is major crash time, and also people who are streaming live. Other campuses as well as possibly live? And home. Well, that's great. So I'll dive right in. The search committee gave me a charge, a homework assignment in essence, to give a 30 to 45 minute presentation focusing on the student life cycle using the SUNY Erie theme of CARES. And so I'm going to talk about that. But one of the things I want to, in terms of an introduction, you'll see on this slide at the bottom, I've put the SUNY Erie mission statement. And I do this at SUNY Canton, and I did this at Brockport. I put our mission statement, not yours. I put our mission statement on every time I'm convening with the faculty and staff, because in my mind it is so important that we keep our mission at top of mind for those moments when we're busy, when it's hard, but to keep ever focused on why it is we're doing what we're doing. And I often either parse it, I just take the keywords that I like particularly, or italicize, or bold. And for me, really, it comes to committed to student success. So the other things are modifiers, but it really comes down to every single thing that we do is about moving students forward. So if we move forward to an introduction, who am I? I'm first generation college. My father used to say to me and my 3 siblings, there are 2 reasons a kid goes to college. 1, because his parents went, and 2, because his parents didn't go. We all 4 went and completed because our parents didn't go and wanted to. And so it was a given that we were going to college. I have a pretty traditional background, having gone to college. I came to UB for my doctorate in counseling psychology. I'm a licensed psychologist. I then went to SUNY Brockport, the college at Brockport, and did a traditional assistant professor pathways. I was asked to be department chair of a very large department, grew to 750 majors. And then I was asked to be dean, which I did for 6.5 years. And I was asked to be interim provost, which I did for a year. And then had the opportunity to leave after 20 years at Brockport to be provost and vice president for academic affairs at the SUNY College of Technology at Canton, where this is my 4th year there. And at Canton, you notice I wrote SLCCC. The colleges of technology were 2-year institutions. So Canton offered certificates and associate's degrees until '97. And St. Lawrence County, the largest county in the state of New York, the least populous, if you don't count cows, because of the dairy industry, and also one of the poorest counties. So urban poverty and rural poverty look different, but what that looks like in terms of student success is very similar. Okay. But also, because we were a 2-year college, St. Lawrence County does not have a community college. And so SUNY Canton really functions, has and still does functions as the community college for St. Lawrence County and some of the neighboring counties. We now expanded into bachelor's degrees, and because at the same time online was growing, a lot of those bachelor's degrees, which are often completer degrees for transfer students, are online. As of Wednesday, the number I got Wednesday is that 41% of our students are enrolled in completely online programs, which puts us as one of the leaders in SUNY, both in quantity but also importantly quality, because we went into online in a really serious way with the faculty in terms of creating programs that were very intentional, not just driven by budget. They were created as online programs. One of the things about working at an access institution like SUNY Canton is that it fits very closely with my passion. Again, being first generation college and that idea my father pointed out, I believe strongly that Admit One, my first job was as a movie theater usher back in the days, and on the tickets it said Admit One. I believe that a post-secondary credential, certificate, associate's degree, bachelor's degree is the ticket to the middle class. Middle class, I'll operationally define as a living wage, job security, and benefits. If you have a post-secondary credential, those are pretty much a reasonable expectation. If you don't, I believe they're aspirational. And if you land them, you get in at UPS or some place with good benefits, the economy turns around, and as I experienced in my own family life growing up, you lose those things. And then you gain them back a few years later, and then you lose them again. So the importance of a post-secondary credential is huge. In terms of what we do for our students, we are, in essence, the fork in the road, middle class this way, maybe this way. So it is so important that we attract those students to our programs and we help them to succeed through them. Because as a healthcare practitioner, as a psychologist, in healthcare we believe first do no harm. In our field, harm, I believe, is when a student comes to us, accrues debt, but not a degree. So we very much want to avoid, to the extent possible, debt without degree. And that's where the retention and completion agenda comes into play. And both at SUNY Canton and all the community colleges, the Access mission leads us to having to invest significant time, money, and effort to that completion agenda to avoid debt without degree and also to issue that ticket to the middle class. How do we do that? We offer a high-quality portfolio of programs that will attract the students. Have to be programs that they want. And then, once they're here, a strong focus on retention, graduation, and then placement into transfer or employment. And SUNY Canton, as in my conversations throughout the day, the parallels are significant. At SUNY Canton, we have HVAC, we have automotive, we have LPN, RN, you know, the kind of standard programs, very parallel with, we have Police Academy. Very, very similar in terms of the portfolio, as well as, most importantly, the student body and the work that we have to do. I've said in my cover letter, it says I am mission-focused and metric-driven. I'm mission-focused because in my work with colleagues, I want us all working towards the mission, student success in this case, so we're all rowing in the same direction. This is a Dragonboat challenge, which is a fundraiser. That's not actually the SUNY Canton team, but we were in a neighboring boat of that Dragonboat challenge, raising money for a local hospital. 21 people, 1 drummer, 20 rowers, and we learned literally that it's important to row in the same direction. And also, I'm metric-driven because it's easy to be distracted by other things, by other interesting things. Does anyone see the movie Up? Then you know that this dog is? Doug. She's a plant. Doug is distracted by squirrels. Don't be like Doug. This is also Doug. Doug is focused on the mission. Be like this, Doug. And I said this to my faculty and staff that I work with, and the cool thing is everyone gets that I'm really focused on the mission. And I'm like, have you heard I'm interested in retention? And they all laugh. I'm like, good, you've heard this one before. But I've actually had people come to me and they're like, you know that thing that someone's looking into? I think it's a squirrel. And I'm like, awesome, we're all thinking about, we are all about student success. Okay, so here's the prompt from your search committee. And I'm going to focus on examples from my own experience working in my year as interim provost. Actually, it was 13 months, so I get an extra month in there. And my 3+ years as provost at SUNY Canton. Okay. So SUNY Erie Cares. As a good social scientist, the first thing I needed to do was do a bit of an operational definition for these constructs. So I thought about compassion, and I thought compassion is that abiding concern for student success, both individually when you're working with an individual student, but also as a provost, I often don't get the opportunity to work with the individual students, sometimes unless there's a problem, But my job as a provost is often to be thinking about policies and procedures and infrastructure to provide for student success to the student body as a whole. Okay, so it just differs on the role, but it also means I'm leading a faculty to communicate this in their work with individual students, that abiding concern. Accountability, metrics, metric-driven. Relevant culturally, I think we need to do work, and we do the work in the context of our students. And that context can be where they're coming from, their first generation college, they're financially challenged, academically challenged, life challenged, their own kids challenged, their job challenged, whatever the context is that they're coming in, and also the context of our communities. Understanding where our students are coming from and what our contribution back to those communities are. Excellence is, of course, doing this mission-focused work at the highest level, best practices, so that we can achieve the best outcome for as many of our students as possible. And students first do no harm. Focus on those high-quality programs that will attract enrollment and yield placement, and then, while they're here, implement those strategies that are going to support retention and graduation. Okay, so those are my operational kinds of definitions for, not strict operational definitions, but those were my definitions for the SUNY Erie Cares concepts. And in terms of a student life cycle, rather than starting with the first inquiry, wanted to start with the earliest times that we might become part of our students' lives, eventual students' lives. And that may be as early as childhood for our second generation Erie alumni, who might be our students' children, as well as children in the community. Middle and high school, kind of a pre-admissions, before they're thinking of coming to college, and specifically here. And then high school when you get into the traditional admissions funnel. And we need to adapt that for a post-traditional admissions funnel. And then all the work that we'll do while while they're students here, and then alumni engagement. So in childhood, and you're going to see the model CARES, we'll put down the line here. Our focus for student success, for the childhood at SUNY Canton, we have athletic camps and sometimes summer camps, academic summer camps. Our metrics could be just how many people were engaged in those events. Not a strong metric, but it might be about reach. Relevant culturally, for the childhood and middle school and early high school, I think the way we can be relevant in the context is being a part of the community, so being out there. You are, in fact, looking at a member of the 2016 St. Lawrence County Dairy Princess Smoothie Contest Challenge. Me, the president, a couple faculty members, we had a team. We played against one of the radio station's teams. You remember, it's a dairy county. And so at the county fair, there was SUNY Canton in the smoothie challenge. And our smoothie won overall best. It had something to do with spilling the entire bottle of vanilla extract into the smoothie by mistake. And they did particularly like, we'll go with the taste. I'm not sure if it was the taste that they enjoyed, but we won. And we were out there. We were in the paper. It's a small county. It was also a small paper. We were in the Dragonboat Challenge fundraiser. So the point being, there are children out there who are encountering various aspects of the college in their world, and their parents. Our student club, Habitat for Humanity, is continually busy. And if you throw away one of your $5 deposits on SUNY Canton, everyone is hoping you're going to not put it in the blue bin that goes to, I don't know where it goes. You're going to put it in the Habitat for Humanity box because they raise huge amounts of money because they're always doing bills. And our business students do a volunteer income tax assistance program. Parents come in, they often are bringing their kids in tow, and the business students help them fill out their income tax returns. So this is how various ways that the colleges are in the community and might be in the children's world as relevant to their world. And then children as part of the campus. At SUNY Canton, Kitty College is on days when we're in session, but the schools are off. Think Labor Day. We were in session. We had classes. We have Kitty College. Basically, as a drop your kid off, we're going to have crafts. The early childhood program builds activities for the day so our students can come to school and not skip on Columbus Day, Veterans Day, Labor Day. Insert the name of all those days that we're still in session. Campus childcare at Brockport we actually had, run by a separate organization, but we had childcare for faculty, staff. It was paid, you had to pay for it, but it was right next to, it was actually on campus. So faculty, staff, and students used campus childcare. Coming up next month, our early childhood program is going to have the trunk or treat in one of the parking lots, where you decorate the trunk of your car, and the kids come around with their parents, the little ones, and they trick or treat at your trunk. But it's the idea of being a safe Halloween event. In a rural county like ours, there's not a lot of places where the houses are close together. My neighborhood, they're close together, so we will have farmers bringing their kids into my neighborhood, driving a half an hour to come trick and treat, because out there, it is very far apart. So ways that we can be in the world of the childhood folks. Excellence, best practice. I talked about academic camps. At Brockport, I was on the board of the Greater Rochester Summer Learning Association, and I formed the Brockport Summer Leap program, which was a full summer, full day academic camp on the Horizons model to prevent summer learning loss for children at school 17. The public schools in Rochester at the time had a 37% graduation rate. And if you're an African-American male, the graduation rate was 8%. In my mind, it's time to call in FEMA, because that's a disaster. And so it was very important to do what we could, and summer learning loss puts students who come from impoverished backgrounds 2 to 3 months behind every year. And so by the time they get to 10th grade, they are likely to drop out because they are years behind in academics. So as a best practice, excellence, this academic summer camp has been demonstrated to increase high school graduation rates. Students first, again, bringing them here. I think it's an interesting idea to think of our second generation, our students' kids. And while I'm not going to a Bills game, because I've seen the price, I went once. I went to the coldest game in NFL history. Ever? Yeah, not so bright, but I was there. It's like 20 below without the wind chill. Okay. We won. Students, but the idea of having students and alumni bring their children to college events like athletics. I live next to our campus, and I bring my son to hockey games and soccer games. We don't have football. And I think that's a way that my son has a sense of he's been on a college campus all the time. Well, of course, he's coming with me. But it's not a foreign concept, what's on a college campus. So I think that's important, just to be in the world of the children. Middle and high school, these are just adaptations, academic and athletic summer camps, reach and participation. And now we can be relevant culturally in a number of different ways. Students, especially in education programs, can be volunteer tutors, either pushing into the K-12 or in after school, latchkey programs, or my son currently has an after-school study hall before soccer practice, so the opportunity to create that. Or faculty guest teaching, or being invited in by the teachers of K-12. And again, children as part of the campus. At Canton, we have free movies, kind of between the theater and Netflix, so they're second run. They're good movies. They're showed Saturday night. Don't send the kids to Saturday night. And Sunday afternoon. So the Sunday matinee, I've taken my son to it. The college provides free popcorn. It's free, and there's frequently kids and people from the community there. So these are kids who are on the college campus in middle and high school. And again, that idea that it's not a foreign entity to be at college, I think, may have some value for them. And then again, campus events like athletics. Hockey is huge in Canton, in the North Country. People often say, where is Canton? I'm like, South Ottawa. 17 miles from the border, the very far border. And excellence, best practices, dual enrollment, as you have here, is really important to bring those students into the college environment. And academic programming, we have, at Canton, we have Engineers Week, where the Faculty of Engineering Technology create this amazing night. There are like several hundred K-12 students come. 2 years ago, one of the contests was you had to build a bridge, because we are the winners and runners-up of various years of the Steel Bridge competition. Familiar with that? It's apparently a big thing. I learned about it. And so the kids were given the assignment, okay, you have to build a bridge, here are pipe cleaners, and they test it with weight. Who you win by whose bridge crosses the bridge properly, has the right height for the sailboat to go under, but holds the most weight. And this year, I can't remember what it was, but they had to build something else. And then all the way through, every department had a cool hands-on activity that they were doing. But again, these kids came onto the campus and spent, and there was food, by the way, and spent the day in this really exciting building. of electronics and cars and motorcycles and water tunnels for civil engineering and so forth. Very cool stuff. And then we have, similarly, in May, Women in Engineering, where we specifically bring young girls to come and have a engineering-focused day. We had, and usually have an engineer, a female engineer, do a speaking event. But again, this idea of having academic programming as a best practice of bringing the students on campus. Students first. I didn't there have anything to speak to enrollment, retention, graduation, placement. The next is when we get into the traditional admissions funnel. Our concern for student success. With prior FAFSA, which means you can complete your financial aid form on October 1 of your senior year in high school. I have asked superintendents in St. Lawrence County, I don't understand why your kids go home for winter break in December without a FAFSA completed. Because if you didn't complete a FAFSA, you're probably not going to college. So what can we do as a college to partner with your school counselors to bring the parents in, and the FAFSA can be populated automatically with a lot of the information, and get that FAFSA completed as early as possible. And then, why do your kids go home for spring or winter break in February without a SUNY app completed? Can we make that, get that completed? Now, for the state ops, we can't waive the tuition or the application fee. If we have someone who's challenged and they can't afford to pay the app fee, we pay it. We can't waive it, we have to scholarship it. We actually have to take money out of our foundation and pay the $50, which we do. The question that I have is, the goal is, my son just started 7th grade. Moving from 6th to 7th grade, there wasn't a lot I needed to do besides make sure that he had his meningitis shot and his flu shot and his checkup. But we know that the former chancellor was talking about the leaky educational pipeline. How can we make enrollment in college the default path? How can we decrease the steps that you have to do, as opposed to, imagine the idea is, hey, you're graduating from high school. Here's your schedule for Erie Community College. You might need to change it depending on your major, but you're all set. It's a little wishful thinking, but can we lower the number of bureaucracy that students have to go to so that it becomes more the default that, well, I'm going. That's what's happening. There's a website, the FAFSA tracking website, where you can check by high school their FAFSA completion rate in real time. So you can go to any high school and find out what % of their students this week have completed their FAFSA. Because again, if they didn't complete the FAFSA by spring, they're, well, mostly, unless they're really wealthy, they're probably not going to college. The college going rate in St. Lawrence County, 45%. At our best districts, 42% in Messina, where Alcoa aluminum has shrunk, and the economy is really tight. 42%, and that exactly is parallel to their FAFSA completion rate. So I said to their superintendent, I can see how many of your students are going. In fact, that's right. 40%, it's right there on the website. And this was like last December, like, you have a few months to work. You know, what can we do with you? So again, as a concern for student success, can we make that default path with the application and the FAFSA prior, which is a new opportunity with the prior and the pre-populating of information, to make it easier for us to work with the schools and parents. Accountability, these are the standard admissions metrics: inquiries, applications, accepts, deposits, enrollments, and yield percentage. Relevant culturally, focusing on our enrollment demographics and diversity is essential, especially because in Buffalo and Western New York, we can talk about, you know, the Buffalo Billion and the economic vitality, and we may have a great medical corridor going up, but if you don't have that post-secondary credential, you're probably not going to get a job in the medical corridor. And you're going to drive down the 33 in 10 years and it's going to look the same. And you're going to go down Niagara Street and turn left into the deep Lower West Side and it's going to look the same, unless we can engage those folks, the folks who are first generation college commonly, into getting that post-secondary credential so that they can get the job as the CNA, the LPN, the phlebotomist, whatever is that entry-level start point, RN, whatever that start point is, to be able to be one of those boats that are lifted by the rising tide. In this case, without that credential, the rising tide does not lift all boats. And if you're a boat that's not lifted, you drown. Okay, so we need to capture those folks into post-secondary education. Best practices, some of the things we do, we had a PIF grant and we started our summer bridge program beyond EOP and TRIO. We have a Jumpstart program for students who, Canton would accept students with a 77 or 78 high school GPA. That's kind of what it seems to be about. But students who would not be accepted, we offer them our summer bridge Jumpstart. They come in and do developmental ed, and the retention rate at the college has risen over the last 2 years to 70%. Our Jumpstart retention rate is 50%. So yes, it's a little lower, but it's way higher. And so we took 40 students, 21 of them were back this fall. Is it worth it? Think about those 21 students. That's pretty amazing. So hopefully that retention number will turn into graduation. And then students first. In terms of getting them enrolled, retaining them, graduating them, outreach, open houses, a good orientation program is Retention 101. Many students do not know. My peers probably called their parents when they were first weekend in college and their parents said, so did you review the syllabi? You got your textbooks? Did you check where your classes are? Did you go to your professor's office hours, right? Recipes for success. I told my parents, so I got the syllabi and they said, what? No clue. No idea of what I should do with the syllabus. That's nice. No clue. And so how can we help folks in orienting them to the behaviors that lead to success? Placement, I know that's always a challenge. AccuPlacer has limited predictive validity. So I'm vice chair of the SUNY Provost group. As such, I'm responsible for the agenda. We have our October meeting coming up, and the community colleges are having a concurrent session on multiple measures in placement. So that we can use best practices. At SUNY Canton, we are already using multiple measures, perhaps too much because the algorithms are so confusing. There's a different algorithm for every major. And I say to the admissions folks who are doing that placement, good for you. But again, it's about being predictive in terms of what's going to help the students to be successful without putting them at too low a level that's going to delay them and perhaps risk stopping in their persistence. Advisement and mentoring. People often say advisement, and what that translates to, unfortunately for some folks, is building schedules. So it may be for a lot of people, no, it does include mentoring, but because for some folks it doesn't, I always do a global search and replace and use both words because supporting our students involves, I believe, I'm a psychologist, the interpersonal relationship is important, that mentoring relationship between faculty or staff and students. And so it's important to always mention that there is way more that can lead to success beyond building a schedule. And we know colleagues who do that amazingly well. And we also may have a sense of a colleague who is incredibly busy, criminal justice has way too many majors and too few faculty, 110 advisees per faculty member, and may not have as much time for the mentoring piece, but it's something we're challenged to try and find a way to make it better. And one that our president last spring charged a committee to look into student-friendly business practices. All of those things that can make it difficult or unpleasant for a student to get enrolled, pay their bill, and so forth. For us, with 41% of our students in online programs who are distributed around the world, digital is important. To drop a class, you used to have to take this paper and go around and get signatures, but I'm in China, Okay, we'll email it around for you. It's 2018, so how do we do that? At SUNY Canton, it was about having some of our offices open beyond office hours. As a department chair, I was like, wait a minute, we close at 4:30. And they're like, yes. I said, our adjuncts arrive at 5:30 for a 6 o'clock class because they're working somewhere else and the door is locked and they need to make copies or transparencies. I'm dating myself. And so I said, we need to move our work-study hours. So yes, the secretary may go home, but the work-study can keep the office, the photocopier room open, the supply cabinet open until at least 6 o'clock when everyone goes to classes. So we want digital, we want hours, and sometimes streamlined and efficient because, interestingly, we can be incredibly convoluted. One of the things I did in January with the full division is I gave everyone 2 5x8 cards, and I said, we're going to do a turn, talk, and write, and what I'd like you to do is turn to your neighbor. I do this because I hate those meetings where then you share out afterwards. Just a pet peeve. I hate the sharing out time. So I said, turn, talk, and write. First question was, when are those moments when we're most living our mission? I wanted to hear about those top-of-mind times that you saved a student who was going off the rails. And write it down. Okay. The next question was, what in our policies, practices, and procedures in your area runs counter to our mission? I collected them. I said, we're not going to share out. I'm going to type all of these and send them out. And I personally typed all 9 pages, single-spaced. People had a few things to say about where we were doing things that really were not the best idea. And then in my Dean's Cabinet retreat, we spent time, we put them in themes, grouped them together, and then sent them. We indicated whose area was this. This goes to governance. This goes to the registrar. This is financial aid. This goes to me, to my Dean's Cabinet and I. And we put that on the caption, and we sent it out to the whole division. Here's what you said, and here's where we're sending everything for the person who's responsible for considering your ideas. Now, they could ignore them, but that's where they should be. And so we did that, and again, looking at, well, everyone knows where students are getting connected. I had 2.5 pages of when students don't pay their bill before the August deadline, the registrar drops their schedule. And then during prep week, or the first week of classes, they have to rebuild their schedule. And we have 450 students in the one hop shop. It's the one hop shop because our mascot is a kangaroo. A little of that goes a long way. But 450 students, and I always say it's one thing that they're in prep week and it's chaos, but some of them are missing their first days of classes. So as provost, that's important to me. That's not where they need to be. They need to be in class, getting a good start. So we're actually taking significant steps to make that work better for our students. For our post-traditional students, some of them are similar, but they're adapted. So our FAFSA and application support, it's going to be slightly different, but recognizing that we have prior, and we have some information self-loading. Again, scholarshiping or waiving application fees. And again, flexibility around learning style and life commitments. That understanding that if the person, comes in late because the bus was late dropping the kids off, or insert any number of those things. And in terms of learning style, I could say anything, and my traditional age students are going to write it down. They won't know what it actually means in real life. As a counseling technique, they'll write down the name and the theory and the author and the year. But what I found is the non-traditional student is going to say, Professor, is that like when my sister-in-law drinks too much and she does this, and this, and because non-traditional students are often connecting the new information to what they've already learned or experienced. While the non-traditional student says that, the traditional student is like, she says, don't ask a question, he's going to go over, But having that respect for, no, that's important, but there are different learning styles that we encounter among our students, and really understanding that, in fact, that's not problematic. In fact, that's normal and healthy and good. Accountability, again, in the standard admissions numbers. Relevant culturally, enrollment demographics and diversity, our outreach is going to look a little different. When they asked Willie Sutton, the famous bank robber, why he robbed banks, do you know what he said? Because that's where the money is. Well, so where are you going to find the post-traditional students? When I was doing research in HIV/AIDS risk behavior, I was reading the literature, some of the folks who were doing research into women, especially underrepresented women who were at very high risk for HIV, the outreach, well, where did they find these folks? And they were going to laundromats and hair salons. Places people were like killing time, captive audience. You still got 20 minutes on the dryer cycle, and they would do their HIV outreach. So where are our post-traditional students? Well, they're at PTA meetings. They might be at PK through 12 open houses. We could be there. They're working. We are marketing some of our online healthcare management programs on bus signs out, not just randomly in New York City, but the bus stop outside the major hospitals in the Bronx, Brooklyn, and Queens, because people who want to advance with a bachelor's degree in healthcare management probably work in healthcare, and actually we're getting inquiries from these bus signs. So we want to be where the money is, right? Where are those students? So employers, and then of course people who need advancement, Department of Labor, unemployment, access VR, DSS, and excellence should be a new bullet point there. Some best practices might be looking at our summer bridge or our developmental ed. Can we do developmental ed and not charge 3 credits for it? Can we do it as a workshop? Can we do something different that is a lower barrier to those students, but that will still achieve what we need to do for them to be successful. Students first. Open houses. We're doing face-to-face. We're also doing at Canton virtual open houses. In our online program, those folks in China aren't likely to come to our Saturday open house. Also, our MSW program that I oversaw at Brockport had a standing Tuesday night drop-in information session. I think they were once a month, but they were at night, 7 o'clock. So recognizing, well, when is an adult post-traditional student going to be available? And can you bring your kids? And if I bring the kids, are there going to be some Cheerios or some crayons? How can you make it possible to bring the children to such an event versus a barrier? Orientation 101, certainly it may be helpful, those behaviors that are going to be successful, but we should adapt them to recognize the adults we're talking to. We don't want to infantilize grown adults who are our age mates and who have a lot of skills and experience, but still might not know what a syllabus is and what office hours are for and so forth. Where placement may have been important, we now may be talking about prior learning assessment. It's especially important to look at what is the prior learning assessment for military training. We're a military-friendly campus, and so we are actually very friendly to prior learning assessment with regard to the trainings that are embedded within military service. So efforts to make prior learning assessment very streamlined and efficient and part of normal business practices. They often are not. They weren't at Brockport. They still really aren't at Canton. It's sort of a, oh, I know we have that. I'm not sure who you go to. It's not really streamlined and efficient. And now the student is standing there feeling like an anomaly. So we could get better at that. But for the post-traditional student, this is perhaps a real valuable thing, and we should just get efficient at it. Advisement and mentoring is going to be, again, a little different relationship with an adult student. Student-friendly business practices may be having your one-stop shop open, maybe just one evening or weekend, digital or virtual contact, again, streamlined and efficient. And we're still working at that, but it's important work to do. So now once the students are here, and this is, as Provost, an area I've focused on a lot, focus on retention. I'm not going to click through the links, but you all have these slides, apparently. You can click, this is my retention webpage. You can see some of the strategies that we're using to drive up retention. Remember my passion for retention and graduation, because that is the ticket to the middle class. When I got to SUNY Canton, retention was 61%. It is now, 3 years later, the last fall retention number was 70%, a 9% increase. We have 700 students in our freshman class. That's 63 people who came back sophomore year. 9% increase in 3 years. That's phenomenal. My associate provost said we have to present somewhere. That's amazing. Our goal for 2020 is 73%. And I said to the people I work with, I'm like, my personal goal is, I'm not going to tell you because it's personal, it's private, but it rhymes with weighty. And they're like, we could never get there. I'm like, it's personal, it's lofty, why not? We're just going to do the best work we can to increase, and why not? Let's shoot for the stars, because it really is important for our students. Some of the things that I believe drive retention are the engagement between students and faculty and staff. I was in charge of the Metro Center in downtown Rochester, and so one of the things I did as a dean was I asked the faculty to have their break sometime between 7 and 8, typically was halfway through. It was built in a 15-minute break. And I bought Wegmans cases of water for $3.99 for 36 bottles, and I went to Sam's Club and I bought things of granola bars and little bags of chips, and we had the dean's snack break. I had every class in the building in this little academic affairs suite, and the amazing thing was every single student, one night I counted, 78 students came up to me and said, thank you so much. No one pays any attention to us down here at the Metro Center. It's like we're not really Brockport students. This is so amazing of you. Okay, a Wegmans bottle of water costs 21 cents. And one of those little granola bars from Sam's Club is like $0.25. I did it every month because it cost me, each one cost me between $25 and $30. And they were ecstatic, and the faculty were also joining them and hanging out during this time, which was great, because normally what would happen during that break is the faculty ran back to their offices and checked their email. Now they were hanging out, having conversation with students. It was great. At Canton, our dining hall has discounted lunch on Fridays for $5. It's the cheapest, best lunch on campus. And so I've said to the faculty, I will pay for your $5 Friday because I want you sitting down and having lunch with students. And it's amazing. Our auto program, our funeral services program, our trio program, they're the most frequent flyers here. But the faculty come and they sign in and so that I can count and pay for it at the end of the semester. I have a feeling that every time you have faculty and students or faculty, staff, and students together, it's probably a good thing. Even if they're not specifically talking about it. I sat with the automotive folks and I was talking to the main faculty member, and he was talking about, well, I got these extra rims, and the student was saying, well, you know, I got these, where'd you get the extra rims? I said, what do you need extra rims for? And he said, snow tires. And I said, what are you, an amateur? And the student, you know, the provost is sitting with the automotive, and the professor looked at me, and the student looked at me like, I'm like, I lived in Buffalo for 29 years. I've never owned a pair of snow tires in my life. He's like, oh, well, I live in the Adirondacks, and I was just teasing with him. But the students are like, the professor and the provost are joking. They're ribbing each other. Totally seeing us on a totally different level. I did actually just buy a whole lot of equipment for the automotive program, and he gave me a Subaru University shirt, so I think we're still good. But it was fun, and I think it's great for the students to see that no, we're approachable. How are we doing? We're at 45? Oh, okay, I'm going to finish real quick. And this is the most important slide. Cost reduction. Funded 71% of our textbooks, 71% of our courses have the textbooks on reserve at the library, OERs, and for students hitting into bumps, scholarships, emergency loans, and completion grants we're funding at a higher level under my allocation of funds. You can click through and see my metric-driven stuff, strategic plan. The dashboard is my annual stuff. I mentioned my retention rate. The graduation rate was 31% when I got there. As of June, it's 44%. 13% in 3 years. Tickets to the middle class. Now that's IPED's numbers. The problems with that, so I asked IR all I want to know is when the student got here, 6 years later, do they have a credential? That's all I want to know. I don't care whether they started in one program or changed. Just, can we do that number? We call it completion. 3 years ago, it was 44%. It's now 48%. The cohort we're going to measure in June has already exceeded 51% completing a credential. So we're hoping more of them will complete. So again, the point of all of this is these strategies are effective. We can drive these numbers forward with allocation of time and money, using best practices, and really a mission focus. Relevant culturally, in terms of, we're still working with our achievement gap, as everyone is, and that's something that should not be, to have a gap in achievement between different groups, different graduation rates in essence. Faculty staff hiring. At Brockport in my school, I moved underrepresented faculty from 18% to 28% in 5 years. At Canton, across the whole faculty, I've moved underrepresented minority faculty from 12% to 18% in 3 years. It can be done. It takes more than a commitment to diversity. It takes procedures and practice. You have to actually do it. You can't just say it. You have to have a plan and implement it. We also, last year, I charged a committee to do a faculty staff salary equity analysis. And in our new contract, the state op contract, they've actually allocated money in our raises that have to go to resolving salary equity and compression issues. So, but we were going to do it on our own anyway. We identified folks who were less than 80% of what they should be being paid, and had the faculty task force make a recommendation, which we were going to do this year. Best practices. Summer of 16, my associate provost and I did a deep dive into the retention literature, and if you go to my retention webpage at the top, you have a link to that literature review, because we wanted best practices for this work. Student Learning Outcomes Assessment, you guys have done amazing work. I read your monitoring report Tuesday night. You guys must be tired. Because that's a lot of work to do under a time limit. I've done it at Canton, and I did it at Brockport before that. But you can go to my assessment web page, and if you go to the bottom, you can actually see all of the student learning outcomes for the past 3 years in every academic program, as well as the action plans to improve problems and the dollars that I allocated. You find a weakness and you need money to fix it, I allocated money to fix it. So people were like, you mean we have a problem and you gave us money? Well, yeah, because that's how it works, right? Students First, I charged our first year experience folks with reference to the peer-reviewed literature, revising their program, because a first-year program is Retention 102. Co-requisite remediation in developmental math and English. We doubled success rates, not just by May, but by December. They caught up, so we went from a 25 to 30% success rate, so you're better at that level course, to a 60% success rate in math and a 75% success rate in English. And all it took was funding. So the same instructor teaches at the same time, developmental and at level. They get a third course on load to do supplemental instruction. So for each section, it's costing me $3,000. We had 8 sections, $24,000. In SUNY tuition dollars, which is $7,000 a student, if one student stays for 4 years, they've paid for our entire co-requisite remediation in English, and we need one student to pay for math. I asked the chairs if we could do it. They said yes. And I said, can you do it by next year? They said, we would love to. We've been wanting to do this for years. I said, why haven't you? They said, we asked, and we got no answer. Like, now you have an answer and you have the money. So we did it, and we're thrilled with the success rate. Early alerts and intrusive advising. My question for the faculty was, we have these. Who has the verbal? Because it's about an interpersonal thing. And I'll skip to the last one. Career services from day one, because a career goal will keep students focused and persisting. And then, of course, at the end, help them with placement. Alumni engagement. I'm going to move smoothly. Under relevant culturally, I created as a dean, I charged my departments as seniors to try to raise money, not dollars, but percent participation. The punchline is Social Work 1, with their 100% participation in their Pie the Professor fundraiser. Every single student paid money to Pie the Professor. And what they won was $500 added to their department's budget, and they got to say what it was for, so they wanted a microwave and such for the student lounge, which is still good. I created a board of ambassadors in the school to help me do the reach out work to faculty. Gold alumni are graduates of the last decade. And I'm going to a conference on Monday near Boston. Our president is interested in an entrepreneurship accelerator to build small businesses. And I saw something that might be located in a building nearby related to, yes, it was looking at it. I'm going to a conference at UMass Lowell Monday. I have multiple suitcases packed. And in terms of excellence, at Canton, every single major, every single program is required to have an industrial advisory board, and those board members have to be approved by our college council, taken very seriously. Those folks are often looked to for internship and hiring and giving. And involving alumni in continuing education if it's required for their profession. Our non-credit workforce does a lot of that for dentists, actually. We don't have a dental school, but all sorts of other folks. Deans, all of us deans at Brockport went to the Case Development for Deans conference so that we could learn how to work with our advancement folks. And we basically said, how do you want to use us? Students First. I created the Sticky Eagles project. Brockport is the Screaming Eagles. I was over education. Every one of my programs had capstone internships or student teaching. We had lost a lot of our alumni. We had lost half of them. So I said, here's how it worked. Anyone going out on a capstone took this stack of cards that had alumni contact information. You had to get it filled out. Find an alum at your internship site or at your student teaching site. If they fill out this information, they get a sticky eagle that they all ended up putting on their IDs. You know, everyone wears an ID now. So now they're walking around going, I'm a Brockport grad. We got their contact information, and the student, we had like 3 winners who found the most alumni. We paid for their cap and gown. It was really cheap. But you can do these kind of cool things that will move things forward. And those students ended up having great conversations with alumni working in their discipline. In conclusion, abiding concern for student success, mission-focused, metric-driven. My potential is the sales pitch, to adapt or adopt things I've already done, embedded with the things that are already going well here. Thank you for your time on a Friday afternoon. Questions? And I added one. What's important to you as you think about the next provost? I'll leave this on for questions. Wow, I actually didn't go over. There are 10 minutes. Are we able to take questions from streaming folks or no?
I don't think we were able to pull that off.
Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah?
Great presentation.
Thank you.
Why do you want to come to SUNY here?
That's a good question. I can tell you, SUNY Canton is a really tremendous place because of the access mission. Brockport had less so of that, especially as they raised their selectivity in the early 2000s. And there's something really fulfilling about working in an access institution, because you know you're having an impact. If you weren't there, but for you, that student might have gone off the rails. So I love that work. And so I moved to Canton thinking, this is it, it's gonna be great. I took my partner and my son, and we moved, you know, like the Beverly Hillbillies to the North Country, and found after living in Buffalo for 29 years that although I love my campus is tremendously diverse. When the commuters go home, our residence halls are 65 to 70% students of color. The campus has a fantastic vibe. We're doing fantastic work that I feel great, that I think I'm having an impact on. But then when I leave campus, the community is less, this is my generous term, they're not so welcoming of my family and I. And for my family, I need to leave. We need to leave. And so Erie, an access institution, advertises the position I'm in, the work I'm already doing and jazzed about in a city that I lived in for 29 years and I know is an inclusive city. So I lived on Linwood Avenue. Elmwood Village is my neighborhood, you know, I rehabbed that house for 22 years. But I'm not bitter. So it is the work that I love in a place that I love and in a community that I love. So the issue of diversity is really important for me personally, but also as a lifelong commitment. And so the access mission and student support is there, and this community is really a wonderful place to be.
And this is Len Lenihan, I'm going to screw his name up, but Len Lenihan, he's on our board of trustees.
You looked so familiar. Well, and again, so I've
been around for a while.
Well, I was on a particular, in an era past, I was on a particular committee. I was a committeeman. So, yeah, I've been involved in the community a bit. So, I'm no longer, so that's not that complicated.
Thank you.
Thanks, you. Yes?
Sorry.
It's okay.
I mean, you have listed lots of things that you did to increase the retention, and the numbers kind of state that the retention did increase. What do you consider your biggest accomplishment towards increasing retention? You know, I mean, from your point of view.
The biggest accomplishment is the retention and graduation rate, certainly. When you see the students graduating, you know, that's the summative thing. The accomplishment in terms of the strategies that move that forward.
Yeah, yeah.
I think because the role of the provost, all of these things are best practices. I didn't come up with all of them. I adapted things. They're in the literature. You know, the idea or the concept of faculty-staff engagement is George Koo, Student Success in College. Our president at Brockport had us all read the book, literally. We read the book, and it pushes student engagement. He's the author of the National Survey for Student Engagement, where faculty, staff, student engagement is a driver of student success. So I adapt that to think about how can I get faculty and staff and students together. $5 Friday, you know, how can I adapt it? But some of these things, co-requisite remediation, it's right out of the, you know, right out of the literature. So that's just the job. But I think as a leader, my greatest accomplishment is leading the mission so that amongst the faculty and staff in the division, it's all at top of mind. That I joked with Penny, nowhere in that mission statement does it say our mission is to employ people in the North Country. It's not about employing people. It's about what we do, you know, so yeah, it's about what we do for students. I'll quote my associate provost, Molly, who said, you know, we'll be in a meeting and we'll be going around and round and round. Well, should we be open on Labor Day? I don't know. Should the one-hop shop be open? Well, you know, we've all had to work a lot of hours during prep week. And she'll say, or I'll say to her, no one's used the word students yet. And what she said is, you ever notice that as soon as we ask, well, what's going to serve the students best? The best solutions become so much clearer, or the choices, you know, the few choices. And so I think my biggest accomplishment is raising that mission to everyone's top of mind, because it's that moment at the end of class when you're packing up and they're walking out, and there's Johnny who hasn't been in class for a week and a half. And you could just pack up and go to your back of your office, but when you know that the provost has mentioned retention, 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 and maybe it's at top of mind, you might say, hey, Johnny, can I talk to you for a minute? You haven't been in class for a couple of weeks. It's really important that you're here. You're going to fall behind. It's going to be so hard to do well. It's super important. You know, what's going on? So that, when that happens, that's I think, the strategy here, is leading this mission focus. So we're all rowing in the same direction, and it comes down to those moments, wherever they happen, where the person goes that extra mile. Because you never know when a student's about to go off the rail. And I actually, the woman who sells at the coffee place in the lobby of my building, Pam, she's amazing. She always knows when there's a nursing exam. Oh, how are you doing? She knows their names. Don't worry about it, you're gonna do fine. She's so engaged with the students. And you know, the research says it doesn't have to be a faculty member who a student connects with in those first 6 weeks. So I wrote her a thank you note. And I said, you know, Pam, you are an important part to the retention and success of our students. Thank you so much. And I CC'd her boss. She loves me. Yeah.
I'm very curious, as a clear, seasoned professional, from the beginning of your career, what has been the greatest philosophy change in regards to student success that you think that you've come about?
And this is TK. This is the president of our SG this year.
I met TK earlier. Great to meet you. I wouldn't say it's a philosophy change. It's a technique that's important. Communicate, communicate, communicate. I asked the retention committee, which was actually a governance committee. It wasn't a task force created by my office. And I said to them, well, I said to the governance leader, I can't charge the retention committee. It's a governance committee. She said, yes, you can. I'm like, no, I can't. It's governance. I'm administration. She said, no, you can. And I'm like, no. Really, I know that here it's kind of fuzzy, but I really respect that. But I would like you to charge them. Who has the verbal when a red flag and an early warning happens? And at the end of that semester and at the end of the year, the answer that I got was sort of like purple. It was, I think we need to reprogram the program so it has drop-down boxes and it's more convenient. And I thought, what the heck? And I started getting angry. And it turned out that my written charge that said, here's the question I would like to know, because I wanted to know, should the instructor who raised the red flag do the reach out and have the verbal to strategize how to do better? Should the academic advisor? Should someone else at the college do it? Should I use someone in my office to do it? You know, I wanted governance to weigh in. What do you think is going to work best? And they answered with something. It turned out that the CGL had charged them verbally herself, but hadn't charged them quite so specifically, and said, what should we do about, it's called MTS, about our red flag, our early warning system. So they answered that question, and so what I realized is, no, I really have to take energy, invest time and energy to the communication, so that I asked the question and they heard it, because that was a strategic misstep. You know, I asked the question, it didn't get there, and I actually had a kind of heated conversation with the chair of the retention committee after I got the report. I'm like, you know, why am I getting this? This is so unuseful. We're not going to reprogram the whole thing. All I want to know is who's going to talk to them. And she's like, well, why didn't you ask that? I mean, this was during an open house. High school students all around us. I'm like, we should not be having this conversation here, but I was in a moment. Could take that one back. And it was because she had never heard that. All I wanted to know was how should we make it so that, you know, we reach out to the students who might be not doing well. So the lesson learned, it wasn't a philosophy change, but the lesson learned was that no, you have to be really intentional about communicating thoroughly, because that was important and it didn't go well. We fixed it, but it was unnecessary.
Yeah. Michael Delaney, mathematics faculty, professional development, faculty union. I'm not asking this question because I disagree. I totally agree with you that the core of our mission is moving students into the middle class. Mm-hmm. No doubt about that whatsoever. Mm-hmm. I also want to point out that a lot of our students end up transferring to four-year colleges. It's not, you know, it's not even primarily like, well, you know, I don't know. It's probably a third, two-thirds or something like that, vocational or career versus the other thing. I'm just wondering if you can comment on how you see the role of the liberal arts either within the career vocational programs or for transfer students or, you know, whatever.
Yeah. Well, clearly a lot of students major in general studies or the liberal arts with an intention of transferring to a bachelor's degree program, and that serves them very well. But if we want to think without necessarily looking at what are they going to do with this, is it employment or transfer? And this was the question also at Brockport that had a significant liberal arts, as well as I was over more like professional programs, criminal justice, social work, education. But so it's this, what is, you know, the role of the liberal arts? And I actually think the liberal arts should stop defending yourself, because it sounds like it's a question, and I'd like to say it's not a question. The liberal arts don't need defending. The AAC&U, in the essential learning outcomes, talk about, often those get adapted into institutional learning outcomes. We talk about the general ed and the institutional learning outcomes as the transferable skills. If you take those learning outcomes and then talk to career services and say, what do employers say they want students to be able to do? We want them to be able to orally and written communicate. We want critical thinking, and we want teamwork, and so forth. And you go, oh wait, those are the ILOs, which are easily, really, you know, you may not end up being a philosopher after majoring in philosophy, but you are very employable, and you are really a good citizen and employee. I would like us to take those transferable skills and make them more explicit in our conversations to each other, as well as to external constituents like parents and students. When I was asked to speak, the president was out, I was interim provost at Brockport, to the open house. In the fall open house, I said to them, let me tell you about what you're going to get at Brockport. Now, how can I guarantee that everyone is going to get what I'm about to say? Well, the only thing that every student gets are the ILOs. And I said, you are going to learn about a subject deeply. That's your major. You are going to learn how to gather information and think about it and come up with an opinion and communicate that strongly to other people. That is what we sell. Well, those are the ILOs, and those are the essential learning outcomes of AAC&U. And then in the spring, when they came back for Admitted Student Day, I said, in the fall, I spoke to you about what you were going to learn. Now I'm going to talk to you about how you're going to learn. Actually, I used the verb become. What you're going to become and how you're going to become. I said, you're going to become by engaging with your faculty. You're going to become by studying abroad, by doing a capstone project, by doing an independent research project. You're going to do all of these things here. I was a bit of a showman, you know, on the stage, give me a mic. But no, I think we should be explicit about that. Not defend the liberal arts broadly, but go like, no, that is settled law, to coin a current phrase. But that's established. We don't have to defend the liberal arts. We just have to remind folks, oh my God, this is what we learn, and this is what we take out, and this is what we do as grown-ups.
Two more questions.
Yeah.
This is a three-campus institution. Would you have the news and office on all three campuses equally?
Yeah, well, here's what I did at Brockport. I was asked to supervise the Metro Center. Long story. Took over that. And so what I did was I blocked out, I put on my recurring event, Thursday afternoons. It was Metro Center was one building. So Thursday afternoons, I was there. We had a tenant move out, part of the reason I was asked to take over. And so I took that office and created the Academic Affairs Suite. The reason I didn't name it my office was because I wanted any of the deans or the provost to be able to use it and entertain guests without it looked like they were borrowing an office. And I made it clear that I was there, like office hours, every Thursday afternoon. There were problems there, again, part of the reason I was asked to take over. And so what I did with my school chairs was we had our chairs and directors meeting was once a month. So I said to the chairs and directors of the units in Metro Center, let's have a chairs and directors meeting for the building. Let's find out what we want to do. We had an amazing, engaged meeting. Ended up deciding that we wanted to create a strategic plan for that building in downtown Rochester to tell the campus what we were going to do. And then I was leaving. But the cool thing was, when I arrived there, the first thing I did every Thursday was I would walk through all of the offices. Hi, I'm here, how's it going? Sometimes that's all it was, a little chit-chat. Sometimes it was, yeah, we got an issue. Here's the problem. We have asked facilities to paint our new faculty offices, and we were told, we don't do Metro Center. I'm like, are you kidding me? And okay, I go to facilities, I'm like, okay, I was told we don't do Metro Center. and I would have to broker, resolve a problem or come up with the funds to pay someone else. But the idea of being present to resolve things that came up, but also in terms of strategic planning, to actually be proactive and think about, well, what could move us forward? And so the same thing, I mentioned it somewhere, was it in one of our interviews? That same model could be adapted to, in fact, I asked when we were downtown, when you said about the president's office, because I was like, so who's where, and would there be an office where you could land similarly at each campus? Because you do have to land. You can't sit out there with your laptop on your desk and then answering a phone about a student academic integrity issue or some confidential piece of information and try to be productive. You kind of need to have a place to land, then also meet people. So absolutely, you need to. I don't, that's a good question, I don't know. But the campuses, in terms of the numbers that I looked at, it's not like, oh, you would only need an hour or two at this one. That it would be, some distribution. Of course, imagine the president might say, I need you more than here, but I could bring him with, well, that would be the idea. But so no, clearly the idea would be to create something that is stable and knowable. This is when I am planning to be here. I'm always Monday and Tuesday mornings or whatever. Because I think that's important.
One more question.
Yeah.
How are you able to achieve 41% of your students to be in online curriculums? How did you do that?
Well, remember that we were only associates until '97, and so as we were building out bachelor's degrees, often they were completer degrees, so we were only building two additional years. At the same time, online was growing, and you remember that associate provost, Molly? She happened to, at that time, be in charge of online. She was assigned online learning, and she's amazing. She's really wonderful. And so she directed online learning, and she led that enterprise. And not only in quantity, in terms of new programs, facilitating the work with faculty, we're 41%, and the online learning office, 4 people. Governance has a committee that is the OLAC, Online Learning and Assessment Committee or something, where they created a rubric for approving any online course. It has to meet accessibility standards. It has to, so that the quality level, the college really took it seriously. And again, props to Molly for leading that. But that started in around '06. So it's been, our largest online program is healthcare administration with 247 students. And again, advertising on bus stops last year, because I want to take online. Our residence halls are full. Commuters, no one lives in St. Lawrence County. 2 years ago, 680 people graduated from high school in the entire county, which is hours across. 680 people graduated. In Canton, there's SUNY Canton, St. Lawrence University, 10 miles away, SUNY Potsdam, and Clarkson. 680 is not a freshman class for any of them. So online is where the growth is likely to be. There are some 11 or 12 million New Yorkers with no high school, some college, no college degree. And I frequently joke with the folks at System. I said, we can't take all 11 million this fall. But, so I took, we have a very strong CFO who has managed to create a strong budget. And I allocated $250,000 to our PR department to do an online marketing program across the state and down the eastern seaboard, and pilot some in the southwestern California for our online programs. And I've made it clear to Kim Scalzo, and the Chancellor, and Beth Brinkster, that I'm looking for, I want to help them market the whole Open SUNY enterprise more significantly, $10 million. And so I'm on the SUNY Online Working Committee that met earlier this week, and want to move that enterprise selfishly, because if that enterprise moves forward as one of the leaders in online, that rising tide is going to lift SUNY Canton most significantly because we're so involved in that. But it really has been a decade of very good leadership and leading with the faculty the quality of these programs. Often, now we're going back, and the psychology program is looking to register that program as available online and so forth. But a lot of them were new programs that were being developed. Law enforcement leadership is one, developed online. Healthcare management, developed as an online program. So it wasn't about revising an existing program.
Thank you.
Sure.
Doug,
Thank you.
Presentation.
Thank you for your time. It's Friday afternoon. You guys did great. I will turn this off.
And thank you all for coming. We appreciate it. And hopefully we will see you all on the next day as well.
Thank you.